So recently I went to my local library in search of the book with the worst title, and I was going in planning on finding some runner-ups, but almost immediately I found a book with the title so bad that everything else paled in comparison. And that was this. Siri, Who Am I by Sam Cheetah. I pulled this off the shelf like a rabid dog, and I flipped to the back and I started to read the summary, and this is what I was met with. Mia might look like a millennial, but she was born yesterday. Emerging from a coma with short-term amnesia after an accident, and it was at that point that I put it down. I threw out the concept for the video. I walked to the checkout and I took this out because I needed to read this more than I've ever needed anything in my entire life. This is incredible, and I'm so excited to start talking about it with you. I'm only 50 pages in, and I already know I have never encountered anything worse than this book, and it's making me feel like I'm alive. I have been clawing at the walls in anticipation of reading this. This is a bad faith, mean-spirited, hateful review of Siri, Who Am I by Sam Cheetah. Now, I love doing these hate reads. I don't love doing them with romance books. I think there's enough hate out there for romance books. I think that it's often rooted in this idea of like romance isn't good enough literature, and there's an unacknowledged basis of that idea, which is that it's not good enough because women read it. I'm also hugely not a romance reader. I think that's the most important thing. Why would you listen to anything that I have to say about romance? I think we can all tell from the cover design that this is going to have some romance elements. I did find it in the fiction section. I was not browsing the romance sections looking for a book with a bad title. I think that this is going to be fiction largely with romance elements. Maybe it is a romance book, and if it is, this is just going to have to be my exception because I need to read this. So let's get into it, starting with the cover because I have read you all of the summary that I myself have read. This is awesome. I love that it's giving the illusion of her biting her lip with the crack through her face. I think it's just not quite right because the ear isn't lifted as much as the lips are. I also love the very, very like excruciatingly detailed earrings and hospital bracelet, which if you look closely enough, actually does have full-on words on it. I also love the lack of distinction between her arms and her dress. This simplistic style just like doesn't work. I also am 100% certain that she's been described many, many times as blonde, so I don't really know why she's ginger in the cover. Okay, now let's get into the actual contents of the book. I honestly don't think that I could possibly prepare you for what I'm about to share here. I have never read anything on this level. Like, the author is playing 4D chess. She is on another plane of existence entirely. It begins with a dedication to her children in which she apologizes for being an absent mother while writing this book, which is funny. And then you get to the contents of the book, you see what has come out of her absent parenting, and you're like, oh my God, imagine being those children and your mom disappears for a year while she writes this book. You don't know yet, but you're about to. Holy shit. It begins with our narrator waking up in the hospital from a 2-day coma brought on by an accident she doesn't remember. She also does not remember anything about herself, including the very basics, like her name. And yet the doctors tell her that aside from the amnesia, she's mostly fine, which seems patently insane to me. Like, at least she would have a traumatic brain injury, right? If she hit her head and it brought on a 2-day coma and amnesia, she has to have a concussion at the bare minimum. But they're like, yeah, you seem okay. And the thing is, she does seem like she's okay. She's trying to figure out who she is, but in a completely jokey way. This book definitely wants to be funny. It wants to be. It does want to. So her first guess is that the head injury was an attempted murder. Before she lists the circumstantial evidence in bullet points, we actually get the other format fuckery that goes on in this book. And that is a footnote. This book has footnotes. I cannot tell you the reaction I had when I saw the fucking footnote. My hand flew to my mouth. What are we doing? There's a footnote? And so far, all of the footnotes, which are used liberally, are her making unnecessary little jokes. I don't know if the author knows this, so I'm here to tell you, Sam Cheetah, that footnotes are not usually used in fiction, because they don't really work in fiction, especially if you're not putting an effort in to make them work. They aren't a necessary way of delivering information. You can just leave these little things in my beloathed parentheticals. That would be better than a footnote. A footnote absolutely breaks your flow. It breaks your immersion. It like completely ruins the reading experience of fiction. For me, reading this for a hate read, Every time I get to a footnote, it makes me giddy. My eyes dart to the bottom of the page, so ready to be driven mad by being forced to do that. And then the content that I'm getting is some shit like, don't talk to me before I've had my coffee, pizza, donuts, bullshit. It's incredible. Or it'll be something that just should have been in parentheses. Like this first one is, am I a lawyer? Why do we need a footnote for that? What are we doing? Okay, now here's her list of evidence of why this was probably an attempted murder, and it is a bullet point list. That is the thing that this book does as well. It just randomly inserts bullet point lists in a different font, by the way. Awesome. Here's her list. Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Let's hope that's why my hair looks bad, so she can use parentheses. Cocktail dress. This should factor in, I think. Blood alcohol of, I don't know what the numbers mean, but mostly Grey Goose. Funny how I know what I drink, even if I don't know where I live. Hashtag priorities. Someone, anon, called an ambulance for me, but didn't wait around to hold my hand on the ride in. That's why it seems like someone's trying to murder me, and that's how I ended up in the hospital. What is going on? This is page 2. We are on page 2. Hashtag priorities. If you think hashtag priorities is going to be a one-off, you are dead wrong. Her medical team comes in and they say, basically, you're fine. And she says, the lightheaded feeling hits me again, which I just think is silly because she hasn't ever talked about a lightheaded feeling. Up until this point, there has not been any mention of her having a head injury at all. So to say the lightheaded feeling hits again when I'm not familiar with that is just silly. It's ridiculous. Her doctor's telling her that she should get back into her old routines and it'll help jog her memory. And during his little speech, he looks down at his phone and there's a footnote that says, is he reading this off WebMD? Also, every time she talks about her nurse, she says, my nurse Brenda, as if we're the ones with amnesia and can't remember that Brenda is the nurse when she's in this hospital setting and we're 3 pages into the book. Brenda brings her her phone, which is cracked, but does still work. She opens up her phone and she says, my desktop background is a photo of myself, which, okay, first of all, is crazy. It's just a selfie, but more importantly, your what background? Your desktop background? Do you mean your wallpaper? You're holding an iPhone. That's not a desktop. That's something else. She notices on her selfie wallpaper something that she hasn't already noticed about herself, which is that she has an undercut, which even she admits seems like a kind of weird choice. It's not like the undercut. It's like half of her head is shaved and was shaved before she got the head injury. The first thing she does upon unlocking her phone is ask Siri what her name is. And Siri tells her her name is Mia and also keeps calling her gorgeous. And her nurse, Brenda, says, you probably asked Siri to nickname you Gorgeous. I think little things like that are going to end up being important in Mia's story of discovering who she was before the head injury. There's no sense of distress from either Mia or the nurses who are like wildly unprofessional. Everybody's like, this is such a silly situation that you're in. Maybe you're a flight attendant. Maybe you're a vegetarian. Maybe you're part of the royal family. And Mia's like, only I would be in this kind of situation. Like she doesn't even really care that she has no memories of her entire life. On her phone, all of her messages are erased. And the nurses are like, you must be really OCD about it, which is cool. In 2021, that's cool that we still don't know what OCD is. So instead of messages, she starts looking through her contacts. She's looking for a contact with the word boyfriend after it, as if she would have someone saved like that. She thinks, if he does exist, I might have to break up with him anyway. I mean, where was he when I cracked my skull? That doesn't seem like the most important part. Like, I don't know. It keeps talking about this night out that she was having with her cocktail dress, which is, for some reason, the reason that she can't have a husband because she's wearing a cocktail dress and she drank Grey Goose. It's talking about everything as if a night out with the girls isn't a thing that happens. I just feel like it's so obvious that the focus should be, where has he been the past 2 days I've been in the hospital in a coma? Not where was he the moment that I hurt my head. Next, she looks through the contacts for her mom, but the number listed for her mom is no longer in service. Then she says, Siri, call home, and an old woman answers the phone and says, I don't know, I'm Mia. We can all guess whether or not that's going to end up being explained. I have my doubts, but I'm ready to be surprised. After these failed attempts to contact someone, Mia says, don't I have any decent relationships? I'm a millennial, clearly, but millennials have mothers too. I read that and I was like, we won. Like, yes, incredible. Also not a stereotype about millennials that I'm even familiar with. Next, she goes to her recent calls and she dials the last person that she talked to named Crystal. She begins the call with, hi, this is, and then a big pause because she can't really fathom that her name is really Mia and that she's really a person. And then she says Mia, but it's like, girl, Crystal, has caller ID. When she finally gets her name out, a tear also leaks out. And that's funny because this has absolutely had no emotional aspect to it so far. Mia is just joking around, and I get that maybe that's her coping mechanism, but for her to have no like real developed inner world and then just tell us a tear leaks out as if we've been able to follow her emotions at all through the story so far is insane. Crystal, despite presumably having caller ID, waits for Mia to say her name before saying, "Why are you calling me? I told you I'm done with you," and hanging up. Mia gets too overwhelmed with this task and she gives up. And again, it just tells us this. We don't actually see her ramping up to this overwhelmed state other than we know that a tear leaked out of her eye. She stops doing what she's doing and she watches Keeping Up with the Kardashians for a little bit. After a while, she glances at her phone and she sees what she calls an off-brand dating app. And there's a footnote for this dating app because it wants to tell us a little joke. And there's something in the footnote. And it's an emoji. I'm not fucking with you. I promise you, like from the bottom of my heart, I swear this is true. There is an emoji in the footnote of this book. And that is not the only time that the emojis happen in the footnotes. She is incorporating emojis into the fucking story. It says, and wait till you hear what emoji it is. Rush, whatever happened to Tinder? Not that I need a date anyway. Gonna start with food and shelter. Tilted laughing face. Oh my god. You have to be fucking with me. This part actually gave me heart palpitations. I hate it so much. It's bringing me an unbelievable amount of joy. I don't think you understand how entertaining this book is and how awful it is at every step of the way. Truly, like doing a hate read like this, I don't think I have ever marked so many things. Like I'm sitting here talking to you about the first just 50 pages of this book. And I swear to God, there were at least 2 notes that I had every single page. Mia opens her Instagram. She realizes that she doesn't even know her own last name unless you count 4 reels with a Z as a last name. Because in 2020, 2021, whenever this came out, her Instagram was Mia for Reels. That was her handle on Instagram. That was her username. And then her doctor comes in and says, "I have your discharge papers." It seems like they literally immediately release her after she wakes up. It's just a couple of hours. They don't keep her under observation for even one day, even though she has no autobiographical memory. And also no social worker comes to talk to her. I don't know if maybe this is like the state of the American healthcare system right now, but I think that if you had no memory of who you were, they wouldn't just dump you out onto the fucking street. I think a social worker would come talk to you, right? She also has no follow-up plan whatsoever. That does seem like maybe it is the state of the American healthcare system, but I still feel like this is wildly unbelievable in every way. So they wheel her outside with no plan for follow-up care, and she thinks to herself, I might as well be a superhero trying to jump onto the roof of a moving train, but I'm just a normal girl, I assume, in parentheses, trying to hop aboard life. Let's just sit with that. Let's just have a moment of silence for that. She's just a normal girl trying to hop aboard life. It's so good. Mia thinks to order an Uber to the last destination that she Ubered to instead of like maybe scrolling through her Uber rides. I don't know if that's something you can do. It seems like it's something that you could do. I feel like she could have found her house that way. She orders the Uber and she says something like, it's going to the Long Beach Museum of Art. That sounds important, just like me, which is conveying a characterization about Mia that I don't really understand. I don't feel like I know her at all. Is she cocky? Is she confident? Is that what it's trying to tell me? I get that she has amnesia, totally, but this book does have a voice, and it feels like the author doesn't know what she's doing with that voice. She tells her Uber driver that she doesn't know who she is, and together they look through her Instagram and start driving up and down Ocean Boulevard looking for a house that matches the front door of a photo on her Instagram that says #HomeSweetHome. Do I believe that an Uber driver would do that? Not really. But, you know, maybe. The world is full of surprises. So it says that. It says they drive until they find the door, and then without telling you or even moving to a new paragraph, it jumps back in time and starts detailing this conversation that she has with the Uber driver before they found her front door. I think that's just bad storytelling. He's asking her about her accident and her stay at the hospital, and she thinks back to her doctor telling her that there's usually a psychological component to memory loss and that she was probably suffering. And that's why her brain blocked out the memories. And she thinks, Dr. Patel's diagnosis was amnesia as a form of identity crisis, which is not what he said. Ugh, it made me hate California. If he'd offered me essential oils and a pamphlet for a meditation retreat in Big Sur, I would have lost it. And that immediately made me flip to the author bio, where I was not surprised to find that Sam Cheetah is from Minnesota. No hate to Minnesotans specifically, but I do think this is very obviously written by someone who has like a lot of bitterness and thinks that they're so much better than Southern California. And I just don't understand why you would set your book in Southern California if you have such a low opinion of it and you're going to infuse that into your writing. So Mia goes into the house that matches the door on her Instagram and the key on her keychain. And what follows is the best paragraph that I have ever encountered in my life. I don't know if you're ready for it. It looks like the Property Brothers have been here. The floor plan is #open concept with tons of #natural light. And let's just say, I must love throw pillows. French doors open to a courtyard in the back, and there's a freaking statue of a nymph or an angel in a fountain. #praise Jesus. There's no way that anything else like this exists in the universe. What just happened? I feel like I'm in a fucking fever dream. Even better than the beautiful house, she says, is the sexy black man sitting at the table. Okay, this man is not her boyfriend, though she's like, I hope this hunk belongs to me. Instead, he says, JP didn't say anything about a Mia when he hired me to house sit. And then for no reason, we get another bullet point list about why her possible boyfriend, JP, might not have mentioned her to the house sitter. He's my husband and didn't want to worry me with the responsibility of taking care of all the miniature succulents and throw pillows. He expected me to be out of town too. Don't ask me where, obviously. I was the original house sitter and this guy is the last minute replacement. Why do we have a list? Why do we have this in bullet point forms? Could you have not just made them sentences? I feel like I am an 8th grade English teacher saying full sentences, please, to a published author who, by the way, I looked it up, runs something called Smut University. I'm not joking. I think what I really love about these absolutely ridiculous formatting choices is how randomly they're utilized. She tells this house sitter, Max, that she had an accident and she's not sure what it was because it knocked the memory out of her, is exactly how she says it. And Max goes, who dropped you off here? Why did they just leave you here alone if you have amnesia? Which I think is crazy. Who would expect that what she's saying is I have amnesia and not just like, I can't remember what happened to me when I had the accident. It's such a wild conclusion to draw that she has forgotten her whole life, and yet he draws it. And this will happen again and again, where it feels like the characters can read each other's minds. So his shirt says Trek yourself because it's trying to tell us that he's like this sexy nerd guy, and she says, it's all totally okay. I just need to trek myself. And then she grins, and then she thinks, I trek myself so hard. I don't know what this means. I'm sure it means something. Maybe it means something to Star Trek fans. I can only assume it means check myself, but even then, I don't understand what she's conveying with this. She doesn't actually find all that much evidence that she lives in this house besides a second toothbrush in the ensuite bathroom and the key on her keychain. She does spend a lot of time eating chocolate, which it really emphasizes is called chocolat, which you know, based on how much it's emphasizing it, is going to be important in a second. She wakes up the next day and she has 3 emails, and she's so excited to try to learn more about herself through these emails, but they're all promotional material. And one of them, like we expected, is from Chocolat. And they say, try our new white chocolate. And she thinks, those mofos at Chocolat must think they're pretty funny, which I don't understand what this means as a response to that email. Is it just her responding to getting an advertisement, to being asked to try a new product? Or what I really think it is it her response to white chocolate? Is it because she hates white chocolate so much, she's like, oh, they think they're so funny trying to get me to try their white chocolate? If so, I don't think that is a universal enough opinion to just say it like this without explaining what you mean. I don't need to be handheld, but over and over again, I keep thinking that Sam Cheetah thinks I can read her mind. She deletes all her emails to keep up with what her old self used to do, and she thinks, I must have con-Maried the shit out of my life. And to bring up Marie Kondo, does it spark joy? It literally asks, do these emails spark joy? In a book published in, I need to like fact check if it's 2020 or 2021. 2020, a book published in 2020. Girl, you are at most generous 5 years too late on this. She's like, well, at least I didn't declutter Instagram. And she opens it up to find out more about who JP is. And we get a list of some photos on her Instagram. This one is not a bulleted list. For some reason, this one specifically is a numbered list. 1, there's a picture of JP alone and unbearably handsome in a tailored suit. It's captioned, and he has a French accent. Heart eye emoji. 2. There's a selfie of us at a winery, grapevines in the background and wine glasses in our hands. The caption, me and Boo. Wine glass emoji, heart emoji. Finally, a picture of us in a group of hot young things dressed for the club. I'm wearing a statement dress with dramatic puffed sleeves that barely cover my ass. No, sorry, the puff sleeves don't cover her ass. That's me reading wrong. That barely covers my ass. JP is giving me an appreciative look. No caption. His looks says it all. That is the book. He wants me. I don't think that's phrased right. I don't think that's grammatically correct. His looks says it all. No, you need to get rid of one of the S's. She's like, well, ... according to Insta, JP is my boo. Then she gets a text from someone named Frenchie that says, I miss you, are you still mad at me? And she thinks, now I really want to know who this guy is, and what should I be mad about? Okay, what? I don't know if this is outright grammatically incorrect, like his looks says it all, but I do think it's phrased in the most awkward way possible. It should just be switched around. What I should be mad about, not what should I be mad about. She figures out Frenchie is JP, and he's in Switzerland, and he won't be back for a couple of days. And he's sucking up to her big time for something that we don't know and she doesn't know. But she doesn't really recognize that because she's too relieved at how grounding belonging to someone is. So now she Googles him, and she discovers that he's the creator of chocolat, which I don't know if that means he created the specific formula for the chocolate bar, if he created the chocolate company, or if it just means that he's the CEO. I imagine that it's just that he's a rich guy. I doubt he's going to be like a confectioner, but I would be very happy if I was wrong about that. When she goes on the website for chocolat, she sees that the chocolate bars are advertised as being king size only. And there is a footnote, and it says, is JP compensating for something with his chocolate bars? And then it's like the shocked screaming emoji, and then sideways tilted laughing emoji. What is going on? She also finds a podcast that he was once a guest on where they talk about how he has a net worth of $2.3 billion. And she's like, okay, I guess I can be in love with this guy. And she texts him back and says, I miss you too. And he says, oh, thank God, I thought you might still be mad. And she's like, should I be mad? And he says, no need to be mad, chérie. I'm going to make it up to you. Do you want to see a pic? She thinks, a dick pic? Is he that kind of guy? Never mind, no pics. I'm making you wait, he texts. She thinks, not that I mind a dick pic, but I'd prefer an actual present. Then he texts, let's just say your present is almost as sparkly as your personality. I don't really understand this. It is kind of clicking for me, but didn't when I first read it. It seems like there's been a line taken out here where he talks about giving her a present. She says, I'd prefer an actual present, as if he said, do you want a picture or a present or something like that. Or if he said, I don't know, he said, do you want a present? It's a picture. I'd prefer an actual present. I just feel like something is missing here. Or it's another case of the characters can read each other's minds, or the author assumes that I can read the characters' minds. Mia is a little bit disturbed that she doesn't feel a spark when she talks to JP, but she quickly moves on by thinking, well, we have the ability to fall in love all over again. She goes downstairs and she finds Max at the breakfast table. He's furiously typing, obviously working on something, and he's wearing another ironic nerd shirt. She reads his shirt that says something about the limbic system, and then there's a footnote here, and it says, do I need a PhD to understand your shirts, Max? Which is related to the sentence after where the footnote is. She's using footnotes completely incorrectly here, because the sentence after where the footnote is talking about how he's slouching like he's a grad student. And that is the first time that being a student or schooling or being in school is mentioned in this book at all. So the footnote, do I need a PhD, doesn't make sense as a joke without the context of the next sentence. It's so ridiculous. It's I feel like footnotes are such a simple concept, but I guess if you're using them in fiction, you really don't know what's going on at all. Anyway, he says he's doing a neuroscience residency, which is awfully convenient, and she snoops on his laptop while he's making coffee, and she sees a text from a woman named Faye that says, Max, you're a liar. And she thinks, whoa, that sounds intense on several levels, which I just hate. I can't explain why, I just think it's awful. Faye is his ex-girlfriend, and they're working together on research into a better alternative to polygraph testing, who fucking cares? During this conversation, he tells her at one point, I don't have to tell you what the cost of living in LA is. And she thinks, I can believe that one. But there hasn't been anything yet that she doesn't believe. It doesn't make sense as a response. She tells Max what her plan for the day is, which is to retrace her steps using her Instagram. And he says, what's your Instagram? And then follows her, and she smiles at him, and she hits him with what she calls a let's do this baby nod. There's two major issues with that. The first being that there's no indication what this is that they're going to do. Again, characters reading each other's minds. The second problem with this is that there is a missing comma here. So this is not a let's do this baby nod. This is a let's do this baby nod. That is unfortunate. That's a really unfortunate grammar mistake. Let's not do what are we doing to the baby? She compares their Instagrams and how nerdy and normal he is and how few photos of him are on his feed, where hers is just full of her with other hot women. And I'm sure you can tell that it seems like it's shaping up to be that Mia discovers that she was a really horrible person before her head injury, and she's going to turn a new leaf in this book. It is a little bit doing that through like, I'm a harlot and I go out on the weekends and that makes me bad, or like I care about my appearance and how horrible is that? We'll see though. These are just my suspicions. So without like actually really discussing it, like I said, Mia told him that she was retracing her steps through her Instagram, but that's not really what she said. She just said, I'm looking at my Instagram to find out who I am. And I know that what they do is retrace her steps. They don't actually talk about that being the plan. Somehow they're both on board for it. And let's do this, baby. Let's do this, baby. Fuck. She gets ready, but it's clear she doesn't really keep clothes here, just the toothbrush. And for the amount of talk that there is about keeping a toothbrush in this apartment, I feel like there should have been some struggle with her not knowing which toothbrush was hers. I feel like if I was in this situation, that would be the only thing I could think about. She's like, I guess we're only at the toothbrush stage and I haven't really moved in. But she also does fully have a key to this place, which I feel like is at least a step or two above the toothbrush stage. So getting ready really for her means putting a jean jacket over the dress she showed up to the hospital in. And she says, if I don't say so myself, I look like an 80s rock star and pretty much every other person wandering around Long Beach, except without a skateboard and a joint. Which, again, is just that bitterness and obvious resentment of Southern California. I don't know why you would set your book here if you fucking hated it so much. And just talks about it with such venom and like almost like elitism. I feel like she's on a high horse about Long Beach and everybody having a skateboard and a joint. Another thing that I hate about this is that I've never heard anyone say, if I don't say so myself, at the beginning of a sentence as like the first clause. Would you not expect it to say, I look like an 80s rock star if I don't say so myself? Not the other way around? I don't know. It feels really awkward to me. So Max and Mia, which by the way, they are definitely ending up together just based off of those names alone. Max and Mia, he's going to be the love interest for sure, if there is one, which again, based on the cover, there's definitely going to be. They take JP's fancy car out to go get coffee somewhere that was on Mia's Instagram, and the barista asks her if she wants her usual. And then she tries to be like, oh my God, I lost my memory. Do you know anything about me? And the barista's like, no, you just come here sometimes. I know that you get this drink, but I don't really know you. All you do is sit on your phone the whole time. And every story she has about Mia, it really just centers around like losing her phone or being on her phone or sometimes calling someone on the phone outside. It's just a phone thing though. We know where this is going, I think. I think Mia's like, she's like a horrible modern woman and she's now lost her memory and she's getting a new start at life. Whatever. Mia starts getting frustrated that the barista doesn't know more, and Max says, let's get something to eat. Blood sugar is directly related to stress levels because he's going to be that kind of character. And Mia shouts, oh, fuck off, Max. And then she thinks, I hope he knows I'm flirting. And Max laughs and then says, good one. As a response to fuck off? What? Is that a good one? Oh, fuck off, Max? I don't think that was one at all. I don't think that was anything. What are you talking about? Again, like, was this just a line that was edited out and changed to, oh, fuck off, Max? I cannot understand this fucking conversation. So she gets her usual and she says, I must be rich. BTW. Like, fully, all caps, it's the acronym. BTW. She's rich because it's an $8 maple latte. She orders a quinoa bowl, but without chicken, because one of the nurses at the hospital said that she looks like she's a vegetarian. They then spend 3 full, painstaking pages talking about quinoa and vegetarianism before Max says, maybe you should focus on saving yourself instead of chickens, Mia. Which is a fucking great line. And then Mia thinks, does he genuinely think I'm in danger? I don't really feel like what he said indicates that he thinks that she's in danger, does it? So many times now, I have seen both Max and Mia make wild assumptions about something the other one said that wasn't as direct as the book treats it and could have been taken in a lot of different ways. And this is kind of like a really nasty accusation, but it gives the sense to me that Sam Cheetah like doesn't have a theory of mind. Obviously, I don't actually think that's true, but so far it feels like she has a hard time understanding like the inherent flaws and drawbacks of communication. And it feels like she's writing from a place where she believes that everybody has the same thoughts as her and everybody understands things in the way that she intends them to be understood. Feels like she's having a hard time putting herself in her reader's shoes. But that's obviously not the worst thing that's happening here. So far, this book is the biggest pile of dog shit I have ever read in my life, and it's made me excited like nothing else I've ever read before. I feel alive. I already said that. I feel like I'm like seeing new colors reading this book. All I want to do is read more, and then I have to like put it down because it's like, what is happening? I'm reacting out loud while reading this on almost every single page. Mia is such an annoying, stupid character, and all she's doing is drawing these annoying, stupid conclusions. I'll say this does not seem to me like an accurate portrayal of amnesia at all, but also the brain is weird, and the Wikipedia page for retrograde amnesia bored the shit out of me, so I'm just gonna let that slide. Maybe the neuroscientists in the chat can correct it, but I'm gonna let Sam Cheetah do whatever she wants to do with the fucking amnesia thing. There's probably been a pop culture reference every 2 pages, and all of them have been horrifically outdated for 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that this was written and edited in 2013. With the quirkiness and the forced sense of humor, it feels almost like it was written as a parody by a mean-spirited Gen Zer who hates millennials. It's absolutely filled with mistakes and horrible choices, and I need to stop talking to you about it because I just need to read more. I need to know what happens in this fucking book. It's incredible. I will see you soon. Okay, so I'm back. Let's just get right into it. Chapter 4 begins with Mia dropping Max off at his lab, which I don't understand because then what was the let's do this baby nod? If they're not going to do anything, all they did was get coffee. She's actually retracing her steps on her own. In the car, she does learn some things about Max, and while these things are formatted in a list, they're not formatted like the other lists, which fascinated me, and I flipped through the rest of the book, and it seems like this weird list formatting thing that she does, where there's an indent and it's in a different font, is only really done in the first 3 chapters. That does not mean there are not still many lists in the narrative, they just don't change the font of them anymore. What is that choice? That is absolutely insane to me. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean you're making this really strong decision to have lists in your narrative formatted differently, and then you're just dropping that 3 chapters into the book? So the first thing she learns about Max is that he's always wanted to be a neuroscientist, and she thinks that must have been his mother planting that idea in his head, because an innocent little boy could have never come up with that. That could only be an overbearing mom, which like, ugh. Especially coupled with the way this book treats women. Every other woman in the story, calls them all chicks, is very misogynistic in its characterization of all women. I don't like this. I don't like her being like, only his mother could have come up with that. That's really the only thing of note in this list. One of the other points is that his favorite movie is The Matrix, which is just continuing the trend of extremely outdated references in a deeply contemporary book that has now confirmed it is set in 2020. Then, with no connection to literally anything going on, she just out of the blue says, I posted a selfie this morning and it already has 220 likes. She tries to make this seem important by being like, doesn't that sound like something that would happen to someone who's already fully recovered? But it's nonsensical. After Max leaves, once she assures him that if she needs help with anything, she can ask Siri, which is not something that she does until she meets up with Max again, she gets a text from a man named Cobra saying that Crystal isn't answering him. Though there have been, 5 characters introduced in the story so far, and this is the 4th chapter, Mia still feels the need to be like, oh my god, Crystal, she's the woman who hung up on me and told me that she's done with me. As if we don't remember that. As if that wasn't an obviously important part of the story. She looks up Cobra on Instagram and she sees that he has tattoos, and she's like, that's creepy. And then she thinks, well, you can never really know if a man with tattoos is creepy like his tattoos indicate, or if he's normal. You always have to meet them in person first, which, your guess is as good as mine what the fuck she's talking about. Then she says, quite literally, back to me and my selfies, ... And that is the segue to her now walking up and down Long Beach, looking for the exact spot where she took one of the selfies on her Instagram so that it can tell her something about herself. While she's doing this, she's thinking about how everyone around her looks like they need a shower and like they're a drug addict, which again, I just find a really gross way to talk about people in a place where you are not from. It's just like negative stereotype after negative stereotype, and it reads as ignorant and bitter and mean-spirited, and it's not fun. She says she's going 100% Veronica Mars. This will not be the last time that she mentions Veronica Mars, a show that ran from 2004 to 2007. Of course, this stupid plan of hers is not a complete dead end. She gets to the spot and she sees that there's a homeless man who set up camp nearby, and he calls out to her by name. She says, "How do you know me?" And he's like, "We go to the soup kitchen together." And she thinks, "Oh my God, I volunteer to feed the homeless. I must be the best person ever." I don't think that we're meant to believe that she's actually doing that. It's pretty clear the book is showing us how terrible of a person Mia was in her first life. I think this is probably going to be that she was stealing food from the homeless, but maybe not. Maybe it'll surprise me. So she then moves on to the next post, which is a yacht parked just up the beach, and she thinks, is it at a dock or is that a pier? IDK. IDK literally in the narrative. She will not stop with the fucking acronyms. She finds the yacht and she's like, wow, it's so beautiful. I can't believe I own a boat. And I get that Mia was born yesterday. I get that a large part of her character is being naive, but it isn't consistent enough for me to laugh at her ridiculousness here like I think the author intends me to. Instead, I just think it's really annoying because she is able to use logic and think things through in other situations. For her to believe that this boat is hers, I need her to be given some sort of evidence. But I don't think the book wants to trust us with ambiguity. So instead of literally anything that would lead her to believe that she's the owner of this boat, we get tons of evidence to the contrary. She falls asleep on the deck, and then a man comes and interrupts her and says, "How do you know the Olsons?" And she's like, "Who are the Olsons?" And he says, "They're the owners of this boat." And she just thinks, they must have sold it to me. What? She then moves on to the next Instagram post. This is the most recent one from before her head injury. It was posted at 11 p.m. on Tuesday night, the day that she was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. And it's of her kissing this ice sculpture of Cupid at the Long Beach Art Museum. So that's where she heads. So she's driving there in JP's Ferrari, and she's thinking about changing her Instagram bio to be texting and driving a Ferrari because that's what she's doing, and she's acting like the Instagram bio is an update feed. She then thinks, well, I'm not exactly texting, just checking notifications on my phone when I'm at a stoplight. So whatever, bitches. Stop hating. Everyone who's anyone texts at stoplights. Parentheses, quote me on that. Then she says, anywho, I'm on my way to the art museum where I almost died. Okay, so this is like a really distinct shift in voice and attitude. I'm sure you've noticed. And I know what the purpose is. It's showing her getting shittier as her proximity to wealth and luxury grows. It's just so sudden that I think it's doing a really bad job of that. We are in Mia's head. We're following a first-person story. I think there are so many other ways that you could have eased us into this change and made it feel more real. She gets to the museum and she parks, and somehow there's a notification for a post that she has just made, except she didn't make it. She's been hacked. The post is teasing an announcement. Obviously, we all know that this was just a scheduled post. Mia was born yesterday. She doesn't know. So she contacts Instagram support and she says, I've been hacked, please help me. And then this is dropped for the next 50 pages. So of course, everything about the art museum is all snobbery and pretentiousness. And she's all like, I could do this. Art isn't real. Real artists think so highly of themselves. The guy working the desk is another California caricature, being this snobbish dick while also a pathetic wannabe actor who wants to talk about the commercial that he was in but wasn't even starring in. He was just an extra. There is so much disdain for California and the people of California that it's uncomfortable to witness. This guy at the front desk does tell Mia that there was an incident on Tuesday night and a woman left in an ambulance. First, everyone thought she had slipped, and then there was this rumor that started spreading that it was actually a fist fight between the art museum's executive director's wife and his mistress, who were both pregnant. He also tells her that she wasn't on the guest list, but JP was. She then, as she says, channels her inner Veronica Mars. This is the third time that Veronica Mars has been mentioned in like 15 pages, and yet the first one to have a footnote that says, I love you, Kristen Bell. Hashtag marshmallows. Hashtag Veronica Mars. What? What? What is going on? Why are we speaking straight directly to Kristen Bell? Did she want her to read this? I don't understand. What purpose is that footnote serving? It's like not a joke like the rest of them. It's not any information. It's just, I love you, Kristen Bell. Hello? So she channels her inner Veronica Mars by going around to the wrong side of the desk beside this guy and just kind of like looking at the guest list, which has the address for the director that she apparently slept with. It's incredibly convenient. She starts feeling dread, not at the possibility of being a mistress, but because her name wasn't on the guest list. She thinks to herself, it's not like I'm some 1950s housewife who goes by Mrs. J.P. Howard and lives in the shadow of my husband. I'm a millennial with a decent Insta following and an undercut. Fuck. Exploring the museum, she hates all the exhibits, but she does like the restaurant. She looks out of the restaurant windows at the beach and she thinks this isn't far from where I took that selfie near the meth head, which I think is just mean and trying to be funny. Like, haha, substance use disorder. Haha, pinning the failures of a society and its systems on the individual. I hate it. I just hate it. I don't know. I know at this point, it's trying to make some class commentary, really weakly. It's trying to say she's like a shitty rich person. But I also think we're meant to laugh at her use of words like meth head. At the restaurant, she finds a waitress who recognizes her as the woman who left in an ambulance on Tuesday night. And she says she snaps to attention. Hashtag eyewitness. Part of me almost finds this funny, actually, which is like almost embarrassing to admit. It's because it kind of reminds me of how my mom would talk in like 2015 in a self-aware, like trying to be like her kids kind of way. So it's almost endearing. But I don't think that this book is self-aware in the way my mom was 5 years before this was written. The waitress, Azalea, says that she heard an argument where someone shouted Gold Rush, which is funny because that's a dating app for rich men and also something in Mia's Instagram bio that she never once tried to Google but has not been able to figure out. Azalea saw her fall into the ice sculpture and says she flew backwards and that it was obvious she had been pushed. They exchange Instas because it's always called Insta in both dialogue and narration as well, and Mia sees that Azalea posted on the night of the accident being like, I saw a woman die tonight. Hold your loved ones close. Social media is filled with fake women. Is the moral really? Like, I think that's what this book on the whole is trying to say. I think that's the lesson that Mia is going to learn at the end. It also here does specifically reference an Instagram filter by name when she talks about Azalea's post, which is hilarious to me and also not the last time it will do this. She then wanders through the selfie exhibit at the museum. It's pretentious, whatever. She reads the description about how in the past self-portraiture was limited to the rich, but now everyone can experiment with it. And she thinks, I have to remember that for the next time Max gives me a smug look when I'm taking a photo. Which, like, this is a dynamic that is going to be established between them, but has not been yet. They have spent all of 2 hours with each other, and I don't think even one time she took a photo and he was all holier than thou about it. He will do that later on in the book, but it doesn't make sense to have it here. It also doesn't even make sense for that to be her excuse because she is part of the upper class. So to be like, this is the democratization of self-portraiture, you would have always had access to it, and I'm sure Max would point that out. I think this is just meant to be her thinking about Max in contexts that have little to do with him to show that she likes him, because I'm convinced that they're going to end up together. But it's so absolutely ridiculous to reference a dynamic that has not been created yet. So part of the selfie exhibit is a selfie booth, which is just a photo booth, where you can add your photo to a wall of selfies. She takes what she calls a mugshot, and the worker says she loves how moody AF she is. And then Mia goes, no, bitch. I just hate the world for real at the moment. Which again, like, who is this character? I know she has amnesia, but you can't only show us her emotions by completely changing who she is from moment to moment and then not recognize that that's what you're doing. So she pastes her photo to the wall and she writes on it, if you know this woman, message me on Instagram or Insta. And then she says, I walk out of there wearing my mood harder than Lady Gaga wore that sliced meat dress. Once again, these absolutely incessant references are like quite literally 10 years too late. I never in a million years would have guessed that I would be reading a book published and set in 2020 that referenced the Lady Gaga meat dress. The next chapter is Mia and Max going out for lunch. She gets to Max's lab and she parks the Ferrari in the handicap spot because she thinks she should follow all her impulses to find her truest self, which is like, whatever. I fucking hate her. In the lab, because for some reason she goes in, she sees Max packing up his desk with a devastated look on his face. And then she sees a couple of women who work with him. And she says, a couple of lab girls who are cute enough to make me question if they're neuroscientists, which is so much to unpack, I don't even know what to say. I really do believe that this is meant, again, to be a funny haha joke, and not the obvious and tired misogyny that we all see it as. The women are like, wow, Max, Faye is such a bitch. Sorry you got fired. Apparently what happened, it's absolutely nonsensical, is that Faye, who again is his ex, put a bunch of bugs in their code and said to him, if you knew me, you'd be able to fix it. And then their boss fired both of them for having unusable software, and Faye stood her ground and said he has to be the one to fix it. I do really hope that we will come to understand Faye's motives later in the book, and I need to believe that we will, because what the fuck are you talking about? Max was like, I'm not playing her game, and Mia says, you'd rather lose your job and give up on your dreams than play Faye's game? Yes. Max is apparently so stubborn that he will throw away his whole career for this. Like, you're just repeating it back to us for good measure, I guess. Max and Mia go to let a woman he's running an experiment on go home, and it's like painfully obvious that there's no actual scientific method going on here. They're not like controlling for variables. They're just kind of like doing stuff. There's a really mild confrontation with Faye where Max says, this is my new girlfriend Mia, and kisses her on the top of the head. And they never discuss this again, nor does Mia have a single thought about it. Their chemistry is absolutely non-existent. On the drive between the lab and the taco truck that they're going to, there are 2 lists in 2 pages, neither of which are formatted how they would have been in the first few chapters, and I'm still stuck on that. What is happening? Mia gets there and she's like, wow, this taco place is in a slum. Everyone around me is a drug dealer. They're all meth heads, and I just fucking hate this woman. Sure, okay, at the end, I'm positive she's gonna turn a new leaf, and again, trying to have some really basic class commentary where, like, the ultra-wealthy are shitty to poorer people, but she just kind of, like, says all of these really horrible things in a book that has a humorous tone, and that dissonance just doesn't work. I don't feel like I'm necessarily meant to be laughing at Mia when she says stuff like this. I feel like I'm meant to be laughing with her. And that's shitty. While they wait for the lunch rush to die down, Mia starts Googling Gold Rush, the dating app, and there's a paragraph of OMG, 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 because that is the only way that Sam Cheetah knows how to communicate excitement, which is insanity. Why would you write a book if the only way that you can say anything is through acronyms? Nothing internal, nothing gestural, just OMG. She is freaking out because she's Googled it and discovered that she is the owner of Gold Rush. A dating app, questionable name, a questionable title, that sets up rich men with hot young women. This means that Mia herself is very rich, not just dating a rich guy. Then JP calls her, FaceTimes her, and she's too freaked out to answer, so her and Max Google him for a little bit first just to like get to know him a little more. She asks Siri, finally, to tell her about who JP Howard is. Siri gives her a Wikipedia page and a file, which is an inactive Gold Rush profile. That is not how any of that works. On the profile, there's a spelling mistake, which I can't see as being deliberate, and I think the editor just missed. His profile makes him seem like the most basic, flavorless rich man ever. Truly the prototype, with no bells or whistles. And yet she's too nervous to call him because he's perfect. As she keeps saying, he's so perfect. I don't deserve this perfect man. And Max points out, what if he's lying in his profile? That again, doesn't really give any insight into who he is. It's all very surface level. And she thinks, yeah, Max would say that. He only believes someone's telling the truth if he has them hooked up to a polygraph machine, which, like I've said about many things she's just said, is not something that has been shown to be true of Max's character at all. She's just saying that. He is not an inherently suspicious person in any way. He is so achingly normal. She hypes herself up and she calls him back, and he's in bed and he sits up and puts on a pair of glasses, and there's a footnote that literally just says, #Clark Kent. Their conversation is a reiteration of what they said when they were texting, which is that he's sorry, he's glad she isn't angry, and that he loves her. And she thinks, oh my God, a gorgeous billionaire just told me that he loves me. Who am I even? She can't even. In 2020, you guys. Max, conveniently freed from his job, now has the opportunity to work for Mia. She has to convince him to do it by telling him that she just found out that she has a multi-million-dollar dating empire. And then she thinks to herself, #slight exaggeration. Slight exaggeration. They make a contract to cover their mutual obligations, as he says, and there's a footnote on here where she says, please note, I didn't make a joke about mutual orgasm, as if that's like a very obvious and also clever joke. No one else was thinking mutual orgasm. She then gets a message from Instagram who says, your account wasn't hacked. You scheduled this post on May 31st, 2 weeks ago. And I just don't believe they would say that. I think they would say May 31st. I don't think they would say 2 weeks ago. That doesn't track for me. But she sees this and she's like, oh my God, let me look through my other scheduled posts. And there is one. And in it, she says she's wearing heart-shaped sunglasses and a crop top, which is what she calls the height of hipster fashion. In 2020, heart-shaped sunglasses, the height of hipster fashion. Are you fucking joking? Anyway, it's hard to get any actual information from this post. It's really vague. It just says hashtag Gold Rush Girls, and it has a photo of her and another girl in it. So Max and Mia then look at the Gold Rush app, where they learn that men pay her $35,000 to get a date with the hot young women, and she pays the women $5,000. And neither of them think that's a pimp. She's a pimp. Her job is being a pimp. No, they think, oh my God, what a great job she has. It's also absolutely unclear what part of this is a dating app like Tinder is, where you match with people, like why there are profiles, because the next few things that happen show that Mia is making these connections herself. She's planning the dates herself. Max is shocked that she pays the women $5,000 and he says they must be special. And she goes, not as special as you, and then kisses him on the cheek, and then the chapter ends and the next chapter begins with her getting tagged in a photo of a man in just his underwear who has edited her profile picture into a little thought bubble, and she acts like a cat in heat. She fully goes insane. She's clawing at the walls and howling, and Max is like, girl, it's probably just a bot. She then gets a text from someone with the same name as this Instagram profile saying, we need to meet up. Come meet me, babe. And she squeals and then is like, I literally need to go. Max says, if you're going, I'm coming with you. It's clear there's a jealousy factor here, but it's also a safety thing. Like, why do you trust this man enough to just meet up with him on a whim when you have amnesia and you don't know anybody? This man is Jules, an Instagram underwear model who is currently doing a shoot on the beach. And he is so hot that Mia thinks to herself, hopefully Jules can drive me home and we can just send Max on his way, which is so insane. Why the fuck is she acting like this when I know damn well her and Max are going to end up together? Jules wants to talk about a date that he has planned with Crystal, who won't answer his texts. Mia thinks, wow, literally everybody and their mom wants Crystal. She must be like a porn star you can bring home to the family, which, like, I don't know, man. I'm just not loving that. I think there are very few women in this story generally, and all of them are characterized as the sum of their appearance. They're all fake or hot or fake and hot, and it's fucking annoying. She is constantly putting other women down as well. She texts that Cobra guy and asks him if he got a hold of Crystal, and he says no. So she says, don't worry, I'll tell her that you're looking for her. And then literally thinks, not. As if she's 8 years old. Next thing she says, I'm rubber, you're glue. What the fuck? Mia's kind of getting stressed about this Crystal thing, not just because she has promises to keep, but because she's decided that Crystal is the only person that really knows her, and that Crystal hating her and not wanting to talk to her must say something bad about who she is. And then Max says, I know you, Mia. I don't know how anyone could ever hate you. Despite the fact that, for one, they have known each other for less than a day, and for two, she just basically dumped his ass on the side of the road for the chance to be with someone hotter than him. They not only have no chemistry, but their relationship makes absolutely zero sense. The next thing they do is they follow the lead of the art museum director who she maybe was having an affair with. He lives in this ginormous fancy mansion, and she thinks to herself, damn, I really hope I wasn't sucking old man dick just to hang out in this cool house. Frederick is 90, and he thinks that Mia is an artist. And when he says this, she says, Snapchat hearts practically spring from my brain spontaneously and encircle my head like a fairy princess wreath. Okay, now we are referencing 2015 Snapchat filters in our 2020 book. I can't even come up with anything to say about that. That is patently insane. I think it's actually almost funnier to think that Sam Cheetah was working on this book back in 2015. Like, this absolutely terrible novel is like her magnum opus that she's been poring over for the last 10 years is incredible. They quickly realize that this guy is riddled with dementia and thinks that Mia is his wife, Lauren. And then Mia gets her first ever flashback memory. It is in this house with her and Lauren, who she saw a photo of on the wall. And she's saying, I need money. and Lauren is saying, "You need to stay away from us." She's obviously disturbed by this, but like any emotion Mia feels, it's dropped pretty quickly. When they leave, Max drives and he pulls into this scenic outlook, and she's looking at the ocean from this hill, and she says, "Why do I feel so comforted by the hill?" And Max goes, "It's biology. It's so you can see your enemies coming," which, like, sure, it's biology, but like I kind of think he should say it's evolution. Whatever. She goes, "He's right. If whoever pushed me into Cupid came running up the hill, I'd go in the other direction. Or maybe stand my ground." Max is so smart. And it's like, okay, yeah. So those are the options. What? While they're sitting here, they talk about how Max is from Minnesota because she realizes that she knows nothing about this man. And he's like, "My childhood was all hockey and science fairs and hot chocolate. And I just need to say, Sam Cheetah, if you love Minnesota so much, then set your fucking book there." Then someone messages her about the selfie that she left at the museum. The book is very much a then this happened, then this happened. There's no connection or why really between moments or scenes, which is a hallmark of a very unskilled writer and a poorly done book. Anyway, this person tells her that she was working the night of the party and that Mia's girlfriend is cray. Mia's like, "Girlfriend? Scandalous." And then it very quickly moves on from her feeling anything about the possibility that she might be gay to Max talking about how she can't trust this person messaging her because their Instagram handle is jellybeans11561. And she goes, "What's the matter with that? Your Instagram handle is blackeinstein361. And he says, "I'm proud of being black and smart. More black guys should be proud of that instead of bragging about street shit." And then Mia says, "OMG. We don't have to get all racial about this." So ignoring the absolutely annoying character that is Mia, I don't like this. I don't like this. I think there is nuance to this conversation, and I don't think that Sam Cheetah is getting there ever. I don't like this white woman writing about black men like this, having these like obvious stereotypes about who she thinks black men typically are, and then using her black character to voice them. I think it's really uncomfortable, especially in a book where, like, already we have seen her uncouth opinions about other women, about poor people, about the homeless, about substance abuse. I hate this. I hate it a lot. To have your one black character be a black man who's looking down on the version of black men that you have stereotyped is nasty. That's awful. Okay, then Mia starts taking pictures of herself. Big surprise. And they talk about how Max thinks social media is fake, and Mia thinks that being able to be whoever you want is like what's beautiful about social media. And then she says she filters it through Clarendon, which is, again, just incredible. Referencing an Instagram filter by name. What? Then Max, not cliche at all, takes her phone and takes a photo of them without the beautiful background of the ocean. It's just the gravel turnaround behind them, and they're both laughing and they look happy, and it's real. Okay, whatever. They head back to JP's house, and Mia calls Crystal, who of course doesn't answer, and then she texts her and she says, "Sorry for whatever happened between us. I had a head injury last week and can't remember anything." So she had a head injury 4 days ago, which obviously could be last week, except it has been very clear in this book what day everything has happened on. The head injury was on Tuesday. She was released from the hospital on Friday, and today is Saturday. She had a head injury this week. It's a stupid mistake to nitpick on, but it's like, just shows how lazy this book is in every other way as well. When they get back to JP's, Max tells her that she should change out of the dress she's wearing because she spilled coffee on it, which I just don't believe is something that he would say. I think it's just an excuse for her to ask to put on one of his ironic t-shirts and pad around the house in it. So Mia is concerned about what to do with Jules because she wants to impress him because she thinks he's the hottest man in the world because he's an Instagram underwear model. She looks at his profile, sees what he wants in an ideal mate, and then starts scrolling through Craigslist looking for a woman who looks like Crystal, which she doesn't know what Crystal looks like. So I don't know exactly what's going on with that. She calls a place that rents out women. Not quite. She calls a place that has women who act as princesses for children's birthday parties. And she says, "I need you to go on a date." And the woman on the phone says, "We're not prostitutes." And then all snooty, Mia's like, "It's sex worker," which, like, yes, is a correction I agree with. But then she hangs up the phone and she cries in Max's arms and she uses the word prostitute. It's just her being, like, annoying by correcting the person on the phone. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't really like anything that's going on. This finally is where Mia has her realization that she might be a pimp. Except not really, because she just kind of has that briefly as a thought, and then she goes, well, a matchmaker is different than a pimp. So, in what way is what you're doing different than being a pimp, though? Because I think it's pretty clear what you are. That is where I'm at so far. It's the middle of a chapter because I did fall asleep reading it last night. So much is going on here. I have no idea what genre this book is trying to be. Like, it's definitely a millennial humor book, but also a mystery. But then, like, I think it's going to be a romance as well. I can't believe there won't be romance in this. I mean, look at the cover. That's going to have some romance, right? Am I generalizing? Maybe I am. What it is that if this doesn't have romance, then the cover designer failed miserably. This is a romance cover from 2020. I've already said this, but the experience of this book is truly unlike anything else. I could flip to any page here and find a logical inconsistency, find an error, or an absolutely horrible, cringy line, or insane decision of formatting. Mostly those last two. They are everywhere. I'm just gonna go get back to reading this because I need to know what insane shit this author and this character is going to pull. More than I need food and water, I need this book. I fucking love it. It's the worst thing I have ever held in my hands. I will see you in another 100 pages. All right, so Mia was freaking out because she thought she might be a pimp. But of course, we can't have her experience an emotion for long enough for it to make an impact. So she says, I take a deep breath, square my shoulders, and shake off my existential crisis like a boss. Like a boss. It was at this moment that I just had to put the book down, and I had to figure out when it was written, because there's no way this wasn't written in 2015, right? I looked it up. She wrote the proposal in 2018. Even if she was writing the book before 2015, certainly all of the editing was taking place after she wrote the proposal. And this needed to be edited. I don't think that you can have these dated memes and references so egregiously part of your book when you want it to be as contemporary as it is. It feels like it was written by someone who was deeply online only in 2015, reading BuzzFeed articles, and then never touched the internet again. So Max asks Mia if Jules and Crystal have ever met, and she says no, despite the fact that she would have no idea. She has amnesia. This was never mentioned in their conversation. It's definitely getting unbelievable that she's refused to tell anyone who knows her about the amnesia, and she hasn't run into trouble with that. She hasn't spiked suspicion in literally anyone. It's not even just that she always manages to find the right thing to say and barely scrapes by undetected. It's literally never an issue. It's barely something that she thinks about at all. And no one is ever fucking suspicious of her, even though she has no memory of any of them, no idea what she's doing with anything. She doesn't even think, I must have been a wild card or anything that could excuse this. Anyway, they're like, well, it is a good idea to find a backup because Jules and Crystal haven't met yet, which is like, we were already doing that. We're already here. We are in the process of doing that. Max is asking her what she thinks these men want in her service, and she's like, I can understand wanting to buy yourself out of the online dating game if you have the money to do it. Which, like, yeah, sure, but also it has been repeatedly calling Gold Rush a dating app for rich men throughout this whole story. The men have profiles on it. And I have picked on that being illogical because it clearly isn't a dating app and she's doing the matchmaking. And now the book is recognizing that, yeah, it's not a dating app. It's pretty clear that there are only profiles so that Mia can look at them and learn about the men in her life, right? Max then squeezes her shoulder and she thinks, I can't help but notice how our relationship is getting more tactile, which, like, she didn't have any thoughts about when he kissed her on the head, which I think was truly their first moment of physical contact, or when she kissed him on the cheek. It's only now that he squeezes her shoulder where she thinks, oh my God, we're getting physically closer with each other. So she moves on to trying to get into her bank account and she clicks on the forgot password button because duh. That's what she says, because duh. If it's because duh, then you don't need to say that part. You could just leave that out. We all obviously know what's going on if that's what you're writing. She can't get through the security questions. Of course she can't. One of them asks her what the name of her cat is, which first of all is not a proper security question because that can change over your lifetime. More likely it would be something like, what is the name of your first cat? But your current cat depends on what cat you have in that moment in your life. She says, oh my God, what if I have a cat that I'm not feeding? And Max goes, don't worry about it. Your roommate is probably feeding the cat. And Mia just accepts this, despite the fact that she believes she has a yacht. She thinks that she's living with a roommate who hasn't looked for her and is taking care of her cat. And then nothing is ever said about the cat again. Obviously, the bank website tells her that she has to come in person, and she's like, ugh, I'd rather vomit. I'll go in the morning. The next chapter, it begins by saying it's Saturday morning, except no, it isn't. This should be Sunday morning. She was released from the hospital on Friday. She spent the night at JP's house. She woke up. Then it was Saturday. All of the events of Saturday happened. Now today should be Sunday, but for some reason, today is Saturday. She wakes up refreshed and ready for the day, but she doesn't describe it like that. Of course she doesn't. What she says is, my mood equals California Girls by Katy Perry featuring Snoop Dogg. The song released in 2010. On the way to the bank, they drive past her regular coffee spot, and she gets a text from Cobra saying, come and meet me at the coffee spot. You look great in yellow. Both of them are like, holy fucking shit. He's tracking us. He's stalking us, yada yada, which feels like a leap and a half, and of course ends up being true. Mia's like, we might as well go meet him. He's not going to kill us in a coffee shop. And anyway, that maple latte was to die for. And Max gives her a look which she describes as 100% really? Why are you describing things like that? It's honestly hard to believe how terrible this author is at conveying emotions or gestures with any meaning. Like, she really thinks that she can just say anything and we'll be able to understand what it means. Also, she's used 100% a lot of times in this book, like truly to describe everything that is a lot or like emphasize everything. And it's always written in a different way. Sometimes it's 100 the number and then percent. Sometimes it's 100% and sometimes it's 100%. There's no rhyme or reason to why she does it differently. So basically, Cobra is a creep, which she correctly predicted based off of him having tattoos. And he's mad that Crystal doesn't want to go on more dates with him and he can't get in contact with her. He openly admits to turning Find My Friends on Mia's phone. He's also like a chauvinistic pig. At one point, it talks about how he's trying to flag down a barista, which I don't know what kind of coffee shops are in Southern California, but I have never been in a coffee shop where the baristas aren't behind the counter. Like, they're not waitresses. Cobra says to Mia that she's basically a pimp, and she's like, I'm not a pimp, and she screams at him, and she throws a bag of money that he brought at his head, and then they run out of there, and they go to the bank, where obviously they tell her that she doesn't have any money. We were all expecting that. But also, they should not have done it, considering she doesn't have any of her cards, she doesn't have any ID, she can't even answer the question of when is your birthday, and the dude working there isn't even being like all that forthcoming. Like, he has walls up right away, and yet for some reason he's like, I shouldn't say this, but your account has been shut down because you kept writing checks that bounced and you overdrafted like $100,000. And he told her the details of those transactions. And then he was like, I can't say anything else though. You can't prove your identity, so you need to come in with a police report. So Max actually missed this whole conversation because he stepped outside to take a phone call, which when he told Mia he was going to do that, she said, cool. As if she was too cool to say the whole word. She said cool, and that fully sent shivers down my spine. That really disturbed me. When Max comes back in, she quickly ushers him out the door because she doesn't want him to know that she's dead broke and she can't pay him the money that she promised in this contract that they wrote up that he needs for rent. Sure. Whatever, we need something to instigate this book's version of a third act breakup, and it will in just a few pages. So they now head to the police station to report her possible assault, which no one had thought to do up until this point. When they get there, she says, it looks nice, but it smells like pee, and the smell of weed is loud. Okay, awkward as fuck phrasing here, but also like, this doesn't, again, feel like it was written by an author. The only way she knows how to emphasize something is either calling it 100% or 100%, whatever, or by drawing out the word like she's texting. So Mia now needs to send Max somewhere else so that she can go into the police station alone and report what she believes to be possible fraud on her account. I think that we as the audience know that this was all Mia's doing and nobody stole her card. To send Max away, though, she just says, I saw a library back there. And he's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. A librarian would have great ideas on how to research some of these issues. And I truly no longer know what's going on at this point. What issues? What would a librarian help you with in this situation? And yet it's so obvious and clear to them that all Mia has to say is that there was a library and then Max is already on his way. Yet again, it just thinks that we can read the characters' minds and the characters can read each other's minds. So Mia goes into the station and she explains everything to a police officer who, of course, is described as rude and abrasive because she's a woman. And there cannot be a positive portrayal of even one woman in this story. Though Sometimes I'm thinking that it's trying to portray Mia in a positive light, but other times I'm thinking that it's trying to do the flawed character thing or like a complex character thing, and it just doesn't really know how. So despite listing her possible disagreement with Lauren that she had a flashback of in the things that she tells the police officer, neither of them takes a moment to think, that disagreement, Mia was asking Lauren for money. Maybe that could tell us something about her pre-head injury finances. Then the police officer for some reason reveals that Cobra is a major meth dealer in the area, which like, of course he is. He has tattoos. And then their conversation ends with the police officer saying, listen, in all likelihood, it was your partner who hurt you, so be careful around him when he gets back from Switzerland tomorrow, which should be today, but whatever. Mia and Max meet back up, where Max delivers one of my least favorite lines in this entire book. He says, it seems like that librarian is just a bouncer for the homeless. And bitter. I've never seen so much attitude, and I'm a black man. Did Sam Cheetah think that she was going to get an audience of readers on her side when depicting a librarian in such a negative light? I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. Mia and Max happen to run into that homeless guy who knows her again, and she just like proudly in front of the guy tells Max, I volunteer at a soup kitchen. And the guy laughs and he's like, no, you don't. I work for you. And we met both eating at the soup kitchen. And nobody thinks to ask him, like, what do you do working for her? Nobody says anything about that. Mia just thinks, what? I ate at the soup kitchen? How real does my life have to get? Which, if you can explain that last sentiment to me, I would really appreciate it. I swear to God, I spent 5 minutes looking at this, and I cannot wring any meaning out of it. How real does my life have to get? What does that mean? What are you saying? What are you trying to tell me? So they just kind of move on. Nobody asks this guy anything about the capacity in which he works for Mia. They're just like, isn't that something? Max tries to say, I think you were running with a bad crowd. And Mia goes, he's experiencing homelessness. Because she does this like politically correct thing only when she's trying to be snooty and deflect. Which makes me question a lot of like the opinions that come a little bit later in the book. They go into a grocery store, and this is where Mia gets her second flashback. This one is at the party where she hurt her head. She heard a woman's voice saying, bitch, where are you, bitch? And she was like, oh my God, there's a fight about to break out. I'm gonna go watch. And then the woman said, Mia, where are you? And then she went into this circle of people that had formed around where the fight was gonna take place. And JP was there, which I think is like kind of an unintentionally funny image that like she heard this woman's voice yelling for him and then it ends up being JP. Weirdly, when she relays this memory to Max, she describes it as a woman who's shouting for Mia, calling her a bitch, asking where she is, and also talking about her man. Except in the memory that we just saw, there is no mention of her man. It's truly just, bitch, I know you're here. Mia, where are you? And that's it. Something was clearly cut. These two intelligent people then decide to go to a casting call that they saw on Craigslist to look for women who will take Crystal's place on her date with Jules tomorrow night. Mia thinks, this isn't my first choice, but whatevs. Why Mia feels so compelled to make everything right with Jules is beyond me. It hasn't shown us anything at stake here. I don't know why it would fucking matter if this date was rescheduled. It wants me to feel an urgency with Mia trying to figure out this impossible task, but it hasn't given me a reason to care about the completion of this task. So it's just like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing for the next 50 pages. When they get to the casting call, Mia is tired and she asks Max to do it. And she says he takes a moment to grandstand, in which he says, I'm offended as a black man that you don't see a problem with this. I think the phrasing of that sentence and the description of grandstanding together make it feel like we aren't supposed to see his point here, that it's insane for this white woman to expect a black man to enter a lineup of women and start asking them to go on a date for money. Maybe it isn't that we're not supposed to see a point in that because the point is so obvious, but it does feel like we're not supposed to be on his side. That, like Mia says, it isn't that serious. He can stop whining. She just wanted to take a nap. I can see a world where Mia is meant to be seen as the ignorant one here, or where this is like banter between the two of them, but we are far off from that world in the context of the rest of this book. Like I said, with her little attempts at political correctness just to deflect or to make a point against someone, not because she actually believes in saying someone experiencing homelessness or sex worker. So Mia gets in the line and she puts on this little performance where she pretends like her date with Jules just got canceled because she has to work. And a girl in front of her says, oh my God, that's like hashtag the worst. Because of course she does. She is a woman who lives in California. We have to be able to look down on her. And despite this fully being the way that Mia narrates, she thinks to herself, That's like hashtag the dumbest sentence I've ever heard. Mia asks this woman if she wants to go on the date with Jules, and then she says she starts to fill her in the details, which is simply an error. Fill in the details, or probably more likely fill her in on the details, is obviously the intended sentence here, but I also can't blame the editors for this, because if I was someone who had to edit this book, my eyes would glaze over as like a protective survival instinct. Before she can get the woman's details and set her up on this date with Jules, the director comes over and says, "I saw your performance in the line, you've got yourself the part. I like how you have a gritty look." And Mia touches the staples in her head and she thinks, Dr. Patel said they had to stay in for 10 days and it hasn't even been 4 yet, but it's been 5. This is day 5. Anyway, the director makes it clear that this is a casting call for a porno, and Mia starts screaming about how that's exploitative and then immediately turns around and goes, "Who wants to go on a date with a rich man tomorrow night?" Which is admittedly pretty funny. I will give her that. Nobody takes her up on it, and they actually go, "Girl, that sounds scarier than the porno." So she goes back to Max and she says, "Ugh, I'm such an idiot." And Max comforts her. He says, "Well, Mia, if you were a scientist, I'd probably think you were doing a lot of harebrained experiments, but you take a lot of risks. You'd be the one to make the big breakthroughs." And Mia thinks, normally I'd prefer a comment about how great my ass looks, but I would only ever want to hear "if you were a scientist" from Max from here on out. And then, not even like 2 paragraphs later, he's saying something about how working for her is making him recognize his biases, and she says, "Well, that's what this internship is all about. I assume you think I'm hot too, though." Completely out of the blue, she just randomly says this, and there's a footnote, because of course there's a footnote, and the footnote says, I'm going to teach him, I'm going to let him know how he's actually supposed to compliment a lady. That makes no sense, because you just said that he did a good job complimenting you on something that wasn't your appearance, and I also hate, of course, the idea that the only valuable compliments to give a woman are on her appearance, because that's the most important thing about her and what she probably cares about the most. This is like truly day 1 feminism. This is feminism 101. I don't know how we have got to this point in this book. I mean, I know I'm joking about how it's like culturally 2015, but even in 2015, I don't think this shit would fly. Then Mia gets a text from Crystal saying, "Pick me up from work tomorrow at 6. And she's like, "Thank God I no longer need to find a replacement." So this is when Max hits her with some bad news. He was looking through her Gold Rush files, whatever the fuck that is, and he found out that Jules didn't pay her for the date. She paid him $100,000 in exchange for 2 Instagram posts. So I guess these are the stakes. She has to get her 100K's worth. I can accept that, but also like, whatever. Why would I care about this company really at all? She's just a pimp. Her and Max then lie down for a nap, and they talk about how big and comfy JP's bed is by saying if this was Kate Winslet's raft in the Titanic, then she probably could have saved Leo too. It feels like it is trying to date itself. She wakes up the next Sunday in a rank mood. They didn't do anything the night before, and we know she's in a rank mood because she says, "I'm in a rank mood." She's just worried about this date and what to do, and Max says, "I got you covered, babe." She thinks, "I love the way he just called me babe. Even if he didn't mean it, I bet it just rolled off his tongue. I know I shouldn't be, but I'm all hard eyes about it." Max's solution, by the way, is a Groupon for some random restaurant, and Mia's like, this guy is ultra wealthy. He's expecting luxury, not Dave & Buster's. They then leave for the day. Mia takes Max back to his lab because he thinks he might be able to fix the thing that Faye broke, which is like, okay, what changed? Why is he doing this now when it was never an issue of capability but always of principle? She wants to stay with him, so she begs to be taken into the lab, where she feels out of place here in her 4-day-old cocktail dress, and I have no idea where she got the number 4 from. Even if we pretend it's Sunday and not Monday like it should be, it's been 5 days since her accident. But also, Max got her dress dry cleaned after 1 day back from the hospital, so it has been washed. 4 is literally just a random number that she said. This moment in the lab is where they have their first real kiss. As they're sucking tongue, somebody walks in and screams, not gasps, screams, "Oh my God," and yet they continue doing it. They finally pull away because Mia's like, "Your job." And Max is like, "I care more about you right now." And she goes, "I'm literally on my way to pick up JP from the airport." And Max says, "I'm not really willing to be a placeholder for you until you figure out if you want to be with the hot rich guy. I won't be your backup. I want to know that you're choosing me because you want me." And she's like, "I can't deal with this right now. He's being ridiculous." He then switches tactics to say, "You shouldn't be alone with JP. He's probably the one who hurt you or even tried to kill you." But from what we know, her incident happened in the middle of a group of people in a busy restaurant. I'm unsure that someone just tried to kill her and then everybody covered it up, but whatever. She goes back to JP's place where she tries to dress up, but all she has is this now 5 5-day-old cocktail dress. She just said 4 days, now it's 5 days. She says she squirts Febreze into the inside lining, and I just have to ask why we couldn't have used the word spray. She then asks Max to borrow a couple of bucks for gas, which, by the way, he came home with her after doing nothing at the lab besides kissing her and then kind of initiating their third act breakup. Whatever. She asks for this money, and he's starting to get suspicious. A little voice in her mind says, tell the truth, but she tells it to shut the F up. Even though, from page 1, this book has loved the word fuck. In the lineup to pick up JP from the airport is where Mia experiences, 200 pages into this book, her first prolonged emotion. She has what she calls a slight panic attack at everything going on and everything that's built up, specifically at the prospect of meeting this guy who she has no memory of and is basically meeting for the first time, but is also like supposedly her perfect billionaire boyfriend, who she also has not told that she has no memories. Also like the fight with Max, and on and on. He is really kind and attentive when he gets to the car. He notices that she's upset right away, and she's like, well, he couldn't have hurt me. But then he sees that she had bought a slushie on her way to the airport, and he doesn't know what a slushie is. And she thinks, I'm crushed that he doesn't know what a slushie is. He's never met the real me. I know it as deeply as I know that I love slushies. I take the drink, though, because he's right. The slushie will help. Did you love that taste of the writing in this book? Why do you say slushy 3 times in 3 sentences? Drinking it does help, and she asks him how Switzerland was, and he says, it was great. You should come next time if you're not busy with work. And she imagines herself in a fluffy ski jacket with a fur trim, and she thinks, I know enough about myself to know I don't give a shit about bunnies. I'd happily sip a chocolate martini while wearing at least 2 dead animals, and it's at this point I have to wonder, am I supposed to like her? Does the author like her? Does she want us to feel empathy for her? Her intentions with Mia are so opaque to me. JP has a reservation for a fancy dinner that night, but Mia tells him that she can't make it because she's got work stuff. It's because she's going to send Jules and Crystal on that date, as if a reservation means that the date has been paid in full already. I don't know. Whatever. Nothing happens between Mia and JP that rouses any suspicion from him, except that Mia invites him over to her place that night, and he's shocked because she has never let him come over. He's like, I'm glad you finally want to share your life with me. And she thinks, damn, I was really hoping that he knew where it was, and also interesting that I was hiding things from him. When they pull into JP's driveway, she gets a flashback of the fight that they had before leaving for the party where she got her head injury. He's saying she's insane for what she did. She's saying that her old boss treated her terribly. He says, you used me. She says, I didn't know you. I only met you after I took all the Gold Rush material. He says, I'm going to Switzerland to clear my head. And they leave for the party separately. Then she gets a call from the police officer saying, meet me at the bank. I have a warrant for your records. So she heads over there in JP's car. He doesn't bat an eye. This is totally fine. She just takes his Ferrari. At the bank, they keep mentioning these charges, one to high flying and another to Prada, which were both mentioned at her first time at the bank. The idea is that the Prada one is for the dress that she's been wearing, but the high-flying one is never explained at all until it's offhandedly mentioned that it's a hot air balloon company, which connects to that scheduled Instagram post that she had from way earlier in the book. Yet again, Sam Cheetah thinks I can read her mind. I don't know what high-flying is. I don't know what your made-up hot air balloon company is called. You need to tell me that. Instead, it's treated like something that I should have already known. Looking at her bank account, it's really not any new information. Like I said, the guy told her way too much before, but the cop does say, yeah, it looks like all these transactions were you, and they were fully frauds, so we're probably gonna have to prosecute you for that. The cop is like, I'll drive you down to the station so we can talk. And once they're in the car, Mia thinks, it feels like the cop is about to have a serious mother-daughter conversation with me. And then she starts thinking, why are all serious mother-daughter conversations about sex? That's fucked up. Surely we should be talking about self-actualization. Truly like a can we talk about the political and economic state of the world moment. Then 2 paragraphs later, she's like, thank God we're here and we didn't have to have a talk about herpes or why women shouldn't define themselves through the men they date. And yet then she thinks to herself that we all have to define ourselves in relation to something. And she says, let's be honest, a hot guy with a Ferrari isn't a bad point of definition. So do you or do you not want to talk about self-actualization? Are you or are you not this beacon of feminism? At the police station, the cop tells her that she does have a criminal record. She was arrested for theft a couple years prior, and then everything else is like some minor shoplifting from when she was a teenager. And then that's kind of it. She goes back to JP's to pick up Max so that the 2 of them can pick up Crystal. They follow the directions to Crystal's work, and it takes them to Compton, where Mia, of course, is like, what a disgusting slum full of poor people and drug addicts, because she's the worst person ever. And then they arrive at the address, and it is a Walmart. Instead of waiting for her to finish her shift, they go inside to find her, and she is described as looking like Halle Berry with a pop-in figure, which is weird at best. While Crystal is at the till, Mia is like, you don't understand the stakes. You need to do this. It's a date with a millionaire. And Crystal says, I don't have anyone to watch my kid. And also, you said this last time and then sent me on a date with Cobra, which was just a sketchy party where a snake crushed a man to death. And that's why he's looking for me. Because he needs to know that I'm not going to go to the cops about it. Crystal also says, you haven't paid me for the last few dates. I'm not going to do this for you anymore. Everything Crystal says is written in a voice that is just stereotypically black enough that it feels very weird. Like she's saying ain't and she's cursing a lot in a way that no one else in this book has. I don't even know how Mia convinces Crystal, who obviously isn't interested in doing this, but all of a sudden, she's begrudgingly on board. She's wearing sweats though, so they go shopping in the Walmart on Max's dime, which finally makes him suspicious about Mia's money situation that she's been lying to him about. Crystal is talking to Mia about how she can't trick these men into thinking that she's some wealthy girl. And Mia says, but Crystal, it's so easy. All you have to do is try a tiny bit harder, put on a classy dress, stand up straight, and let them know that you deserve everything. What? That is so loaded, and it also doesn't even negate anything that Crystal has said. Like she said, I can't pretend anymore, and Mia said, all you need to do is pretend harder. Crystal also never said that she didn't deserve anything. That's just Mia thinking that a wealthy woman deserves luxury more than a single mom who works at Walmart. There also isn't really an acknowledgement of how dehumanizing this is for Crystal, just being a piece of meat putting on an act. But can we really expect that from this book at this point? It's hard to know if we're meant to take Mia's side here because Crystal is written to be frustrating and stubborn and holding Mia back. Mia manages to convince Crystal to try on some clothes and takes a photo of her in her Walmart clothes, and she tags Jules in it, posts it on Instagram, and I question if it's possible to take a photo trying on clothes in a Walmart and make it not obviously a photo taken in a Walmart. That certainly could not happen in any Walmart I have ever been in. They all have the same floor. Crystal gets cold feet again because the scene has to be insanely dragged out and she's flip-flopping, and for some reason, to amend this, Mia says, I paid Jules $100K for this date. Why she would say that to the woman that she sent to a drug dealer's house where she watched someone die and then never followed through on paying her 5% of the money that she paid to the already wealthy man? I don't know. Crystal is like, what the fuck? And Mia goes, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Crystal now says, if you want me to go on this date and wear something nice, you actually need to pay me $10K. And even though Mia doesn't have even just the $5K, so what does it really matter at this point? She says, fine, wear your Walmart uniform. The thing that just a couple pages ago, she was like, this cannot happen under any circumstances. But we already know this. Mia is an idiot through and through. They pick up Crystal's baby, and Mia just watches from the Ferrari as she struggles to lug his car seat down the stairs. Then they drop him off at Crystal's mom's house, and even though they're probably an hour late for the date with Jules, Crystal hasn't even taken off the Walmart apron. When he shows up, he is, like she would say, all hard eyes. He's glowing. And weirdly, seeing him, Crystal is too. Because all she needed was a man to solve her attitude problems that were all rooted in the fact that Mia hasn't paid her for her work. And then Mia sees them together and she thinks, they're a perfect couple. Now I understand why I got into matchmaking in the first place. It's so wonderful to set people up and watch them fall in love. This is why I think we're meant to be on Mia's side through this whole Crystal thing. Because look, it ends up so well. Crystal just didn't know that this is what she wanted. This is where I've read up to, so I'm ready to see it go in a different direction and show us that Mia was being delusional, but I am questioning how much it's going to do that. I'm about to read the last 100 pages of this fucking ridiculous book, and I have a big list of things I'm waiting to see if it will address or develop or show consequences for, and I'm really excited to see it not do that again and again. God damn it, I really hope she ends up keeping her job as a fucking pimp, like a full-on, full-blown pimp. Obviously, though, no book is stupid enough to do that. Even the stupidest book ever written, which I am convinced this is, would never go there, right? It isn't going to do that. It can't. I will see you in 100 pages when Mia has undoubtedly broken it off with JP, discovered that she used to be poor, like the disgusting meth heads around her that she looks down on, somehow escapes prosecution for the credit fraud, and ends up in Max's arms. And I'm thrilled. I'll see you then. All right, I have done it. So much has happened since I last updated you, and narratively, almost everything is wrapped up, albeit stupidly, of course, but thematically, this book is haphazard at best, and I mean at best. That is a generous thing to say. So Crystal leaves on this date with Jules, which, by the way, Crystal and Jules, I don't think I've mentioned yet, Sam Cheetah thinks that she's so clever. When I catch you, Oh my god, Crystal and Jules. Max and Mia are left alone together to have a conversation about their relationship. Max says, "You can't leave me on hold while you try to figure out if you want to be with the cool rich guy." And she thinks, why not? That seems perfectly reasonable to me, as if any human being, even one with long-term amnesia, would be unable to understand where he's coming from. They then move on to talking about the money situation. Max isn't mad that she's not paying him. He says, "I would have done it for free. I'm mad that you lied to me." Their conversation is honestly pretty much nonsense and randomly jumps from point to point. It seems like it's basically just there to tell us that they're fighting, to show us the fight, show us that their relationship is on the rocks. Mia takes Max back to his lab where she begs him to let her inside so she can see his lie detector machine and how it works, because she just doesn't want to leave their relationship how it is right now. When they get inside, the other scientists are all huddled together talking about how they figured out what faded to the software and how it's clever AF, and they say, "Max, you need to go in and figure out what she did." They won't just tell him. They're like, "You have to go find out for yourself." Okay. Mia thinks to herself that Max is trying to salvage his career from this breakup drama by bringing her along into the lab and like showing her off, except every time she's come into the lab, she's had to beg him to let her come, and other times she's just shown up without being invited. So the two of them are standing in the testing room, and she's like, "Ugh, he's gonna ask me to be the test subject for his lie detector machine, and so he can figure out how Faye messed it up." And then he asks her, and she's like, "Oh my god, what did I tell you?" Though she spent a lot of time thinking about how he was about to ask her to be the one to test it, it's not until the helmet is on that the inspiration hits. She can use this lie detection test to prove to Max that she's no longer lying to him and that from now on, she's going to tell him the truth. So she says, "It's true that I'm a liar and I was too embarrassed to tell you that I was wanted for check fraud," which both come up as the truth. And then she jumps straight to, "I love you," which comes up as a lie. And immediately after it comes up as a lie, literally the next sentence, the scientists run into the room and they say, "Look, we have this list of statements that Faye programmed to come up as lies under this lie detection machine." And nobody thinks that has any relationship to Mia saying "I love you" and it coming up as a lie. Instead, she just leaves because she's upset and she goes and sits in the car and she cries. It's not until 50 pages later that Mia puts the pieces together on that. I'm not joking. In the car, she sees a text from Crystal thanking her for the date because of course it went so well, and there's nothing that we need to grapple with Mia forcing Crystal into this situation where she is an object for a rich man and not a human being with agency. No, it was a beautiful, wonderful date, and Mia thinks, "Ugh, I wish I could text Max about this, but all I have is JP, and I don't trust him." And then she thinks, it's not really fair that I don't trust him. It isn't his fault he was on vacation when I got a head injury, but it's been made very clear that he was at the party when she got the head injury. So anyway, she basically forgives him and she goes home and she has sex with him and it's awkward as hell and she feels conflicted about it. And then she watches the Kardashians and she thinks to herself, these are the only people on the planet who would understand me. Because of course she does. And then she falls asleep. The next morning, she wakes up to see a text from Crystal asking her for a ride. And there's also a post from Jules tagging Gold Rush. And it has 1,200 likes, which is treated as a huge number of likes to have racked up in a couple of hours. She paid $100,000 for 2 Instagram posts. And the numbers it's hitting is 1,200 likes in the first couple of hours. That is remarkably irresponsible spending. He needs to be running way bigger numbers to excuse that. Mia picks up Crystal, who gets into the car, and immediately she's talking about how she needs her money because she cut her hours at Rush and Walmart doesn't make enough. And Mia's like, "What's Rush?" And she's like, "Damn, you really don't know anything." Mia then asks how the two of them met. And Crystal's like, we met at work." And Mia's like, "Oh, working at Walmart?" And Crystal says, "No, girl, we met working in the strip club." But then Mia thinks like, oh my God, I was a stripper. She's scandalized by it, except she wasn't a stripper. It's this really, I think, lame cop-out where she did the books at the strip club and Crystal is a stripper. Mia's next question is where she lives. And Crystal's like, "I don't know where you're crashing right now, but you keep some stuff at the office." And all Mia can hear is office. She's overjoyed to hear that she has her own space, that she has an office, that she's this businesswoman. And Crystal's like, "When I say office, I don't mean office." And Mia just doesn't hear her. She cranks up the music. She's screaming along to the songs at the top of her lungs. She's just like truly in her own world on cloud 9 because she has an office. And I get it. Like, whatever. She's naive. She has amnesia. She's an idiot. We're all supposed to know that she doesn't have what she thinks she has and she's about to be let down. And this could definitely be a funny Born Yesterday scene if it wasn't a scene that's already happened 4 or 5 times in the book at this point. Like, do you not have the ability to learn a lesson? I can't connect with you on any human level. So obviously when Crystal directs Mia to the office, they roll up to a strip club called Gold Rush. And there isn't even an office in here, it's just a storage closet in the back. Crystal explains it all, that all of the women who were working at this club were tired of the shitty management, the shitty customers, and the shitty hours. So Mia decided to get them all sugar daddies, because that is less dehumanizing and gives the women more autonomy. Right. Yeah, right. So I don't really understand still now what it is that Mia stole from Gold Rush, the strip club, because it is so unclear whether the app is an app or not. So like it really just seems like she's setting the women who strip at the club up with rich men and pretending that they're not strippers. And like that's it. So what she stole exactly is very confusing to me. But she stole it from dun 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 JP, who apparently owns the strip club. He owns a lot of businesses. They've never actually seen him there, which is why it can somehow make sense that he signed up for a matchmaking service run by a woman who works for a business he owns under the same name. And then he ended up in a relationship with her. That's just like all fine because JP doesn't know that he owns the strip club. So then why does it even matter that he owns the strip club? Whatever. Mia does look around the club and think to herself about how it's a billionaire's forgotten change, how he was skiing in Switzerland while all the women here were working 2 jobs and couldn't afford to pay for groceries or to get their kids' cavities filled. And then there's a footnote on that sentence where she snarkily says, it looks like most of their money is going to hair and nails, which again is just so loaded. Oh, you mean the women who earn a living largely off of tips from men who see them as pieces of meat need to spend money on embodying the ideal of those men who control the source of their livelihood? Let's write a judgmental little footnote about being forced into that decision. I think we should imply that poor mothers are bad parents because they're poor and they have to make hard choices about what to spend their money on. Go to fucking hell. Now, for some reason, Mia is like, I need to go back to JP and really try to be in love with him because he's too sweet for his own good, which I guess could be a pun on the chocolate empire. But she's pretty much just saying this because he has he's a good partner because he has money and he has a nice house. She really does not know this man at all. And she says, he's so innocent. Oh my God. She says, I wonder if he is 100% over the argument I remembered in my vision. Now that I know what I did, that is obviously what the argument was over, stealing whatever she stole. All of his accusations were right. I definitely messed up, and I 100% used him. So is there not a better way to emphasize something than using 100% twice in one very small paragraph, in like 4 sentences? Let's think. Let's think about a different way that we could have said that. Mia goes back to JP's place and she sits him down for a talk where she admits that she has no memory and he tells her that he had no idea that he even owned Gold Rush and he found out when his lawyer asked him to sign off on a lawsuit against Mia, his girlfriend, for stealing I still don't know what. They keep calling it intellectual property. They call it the Gold Rush files. What is that? In this conversation, Mia is almost trying to bait him into saying something wrong so that she can internally justify leaving him, and he just keeps saying the right things and generally being a far better guy than you would expect this billionaire to be. She keeps turning it around so that he's in the wrong. Now her angle is like, he should have known what was going on in businesses that he owned and how the workers were being treated and how it's all his fault. And he kind of just like takes that, though she says his patience is wearing thin. He ends up kind of being like, well, this isn't how I saw the marriage proposal going, which I think I forgot to mention, but it's been made very obvious that he's been planning on proposing and Mia has been avoiding him at all costs because she doesn't know what to do about that. She says, I just need time to think. I don't know if this is what I want anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. And then she walks to the coffee shop, despite having literally zero money, and the barista at the coffee shop opens a tab for her. And then the barista says, I saw your man, meaning Max, on Twitter, and his video had me dying. And now this is my favorite part of the entire book. This is the laziest storytelling I have ever encountered, and taking a step back and thinking about this scene like still makes me giggle. Mia finds this video on Twitter, and it first of all is not in any way described as a video. She starts watching it and it plays out as if she is there as an observer to the actual scene. The scene being the scientists in the lab showing Max all of the sentences that Faye programmed to show up as false under the lie detector test, which I don't even want to get into the fact that like I don't think that's possible with what they're doing with this neuroscience thing. Let me just tell you what it says. It's stuff like, Faye likes Star Trek, and the sex was great, to which Max says she came every time, and Mia thinks she totally didn't come. It's obvious. Well, if it's so obvious, why are you wasting words to tell us that? The last sentence in this video that Faye has programmed to come up as false, would you believe it, is, I love you. And this is where Mia realizes what happened when she told Max, I love you, and it came up as a lie. It takes her a couple of paragraphs, though, before she puts the pieces together. It isn't even an instant realization. She is dumb as bricks. What absolutely kills me is not how convenient and lazy of a way this is to get this information to Mia. It's that who the fuck would care about this video? It's so incredibly centered in the specifics of a relationship and the personalities of these people. Like, it's just such a private thing, totally uninteresting to any stranger. I don't understand how this video reached the barista at the coffee shop, and it fucking kills me. Okay, so then come my favorite lines in the whole entire book, which I read to everyone in my house. Mia texts Max, and she says, I saw the vid, of course not video. Max says, I don't understand what happened. Mia thinks, I can feel the confusion coming through the text. Max has no clue what happened. Hello? That is actually so fucking funny. I've fully turned around on my opinion, and now I think this book does deserve to be called a comedy. That's maybe the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. They talk without really saying anything, and Mia thinks it's nice to have a line of communication open again. Hashtag happy sigh. What happened to the word relieved? What if we just used that instead of hashtag happy sigh? Okay, here's where it starts to really spiral into insanity. The next thing Mia does is text Cobra and say, sorry I threw that money at your head. We should go out. Let's meet up. Then she calls the police officer and says, I have a plan. And in this conversation with the police officer, she does think the acronym BTW twice in 2 sentences. She gets this officer, Denise, to come meet her at the coffee shop where she says, give me a deal where if I get Cobra to incriminate himself, you won't prosecute me for the check fraud. And Denise is basically just like, yeah, okay. There's an attempt to make this less ridiculous where she says, you'll have to get permission from the prosecutor, but that takes all of 5 minutes and is obviously just the author trying to dodge criticism for how unbelievably stupid this is. So Mia is now on the task of cleaning up all the messes that she made before the injury and even afterwards. As she says, the old Mia is dead and new Mia is hashtag in the house, DA, in the house. Okay. So her priority, of course, is to win Max back. And she's going to do that, as she says, the same way she does everything. Through Instagram. This is Mia's new thing for the last 50 pages of the book. She calls it her honesty project. It is simply just posting unfiltered images to her Instagram. I am fully serious. That is it. And it works. And just like Max's Twitter video that got all the way to the barista at the coffee shop for some reason, there are hundreds of people who are invested in this honesty project, even though everything she posts is so dependent on the context of the last few days of her life, and she doesn't like explain any of it in detail on Instagram. Everyone's just like so supportive and also seem to know what's going on with her just like inherently. And there's no recognition that a filter isn't the only fake thing about a social media post. There's no acknowledgement of the fact that what she's doing is just another kind of performance. Even when she's full on doing things just for the sake of posting them on Instagram under the guise of honesty, we're still meant to be commending her for her honesty. It is so insane. So she posts her first honest photo where her face is a little shiny and she wishes she had a slightly different expression, and she is met with applause the world over. She texts the profile to Max, and then she sees 3 dots appear and then disappear, and she's like, I'll take it. It's not approval, but he's thinking. Which maybe I have Stockholm Syndrome 300 pages into this book, but this is something that I'll praise. I actually like this interpretation of a typing bubble disappearing, and I appreciated its place in the book. And that's probably the only nice thing you'll hear me say about this thing. This is a pile of dog shit. So Mia goes back to the club, and her and Crystal are trying to come up with ideas to turn Gold Rush into something other than just a sugar daddy website. And she's like, what if it was a human capital investment thing? Like, we get rich men to invest in our ideas. And Crystal's like, girl, whatever, fuck your feminism, I'm just sick of taking the bus, which is a believable stance for someone living in a really desperate situation like Crystal. I guess I have 2 nice things to say about this book. Like, yeah, you know, she doesn't have time for all of Mia's theoretical shit when her physical reality is that she needs to put food on the table for her kid. Crystal proposes that they just make Gold Rush more honest, that they're upfront about who the women are and that they're not all glitz and glam. And of course, Mia's like, that's exactly what we have to do. And she thinks, that's what's been bothering me about being a matchmaker. It's not being a matchmaker, it's the dishonesty of it all. She does still want to be a pimp, She's like, I still want to be a matchmaker. And Crystal and I, we're going to turn this place around. So she goes around the club taking honest photos of the women without makeup and preferably in sweats, because makeup, of course, is lying. And a woman's natural state is universal and not just the author's idea of what is real for her specifically. So Mia then goes into her office and she digs around and she finds a safe under the desk. She's been carrying around this key ring that has 2 keys, one that she cannot identify and the other that leads to JP's house. The key, of course, is for the safe, and in the safe is $35,000 from the date between Cobra and Crystal. Then immediately, she can't even take a breath. She gets a phone call, and it's from her mother, who says, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you that night. And Mia's like, do you know what happened to me? And her mom says, no, I saw your photo on the wall of the museum, which I think is saying, one, that's how she got Mia's phone number, which doesn't make sense because all Mia did was put her Instagram up. And I also think she's saying that's how I know something happened to you, though the only thing it said was contact me if you have any information about this woman. It didn't say anything about losing her memory that night. It doesn't make any sense. Her mom says, I'm on the way to you, sweetie. And then as soon as she hangs up the phone, Crystal says, Cobra told me he's on the way here. And Mia goes, what the? As though she hasn't been posting her location all day. So between Crystal finding out that Cobra is on the way there and him arriving, there's time to set up like a whole police stakeout and bug Mia so that she can get a confession out of the guy. And then also her mom is still coming, even though Mia called back and explained what was happening and said, there's like a drug dealer that we're trying to catch. And her mom's like, I'm going to be there to protect you. Mia is certain that her mom is going to be trailer trash. And then she has this really, really well-intentioned, really just like kind-hearted description of her mother where she says, I'm expecting a lot of wrinkly cleavage, platinum hair, at least 12 rings on her fingers, some on her toes, neon green short shorts, skinny ass legs, and a smoker's cough. It's just mean as fuck, and it's not funny. Her mom shows up and it's Lauren Montcalm, that woman from way back earlier who was married to the art museum guy with dementia, and this isn't a surprise to anyone really. I don't think I've set it up for you the way the book sets it up, but it's not a shock. It is only here as a reveal, though. It ends up having no impact, really. They talk about how Mia went to the party that night to see Lauren because they had been low contact for a while, and Lauren just thought that Mia was there to upstage her show, and she blames all of her actions on an evil therapist who tells her to do antisocial things like set boundaries, and that's the reason why she hasn't been in contact with her daughter. The two of them had a strained relationship since Lauren married the old guy when Mia was in high school, and then with no evidence to support this, Mia thinks to herself, I'm starting to get the impression that Frederick, the old guy, was a perv, and that my mom didn't always side with me. Girl, what the fuck made you think that? By the way, they're having this heart-to-heart in the middle of an active and very loud strip club, and then Cobra shows up, and he joins their conversation to say that his therapist is also always telling him to do things like set boundaries. And when Mia expresses surprise that he's in therapy, he says, girl, it's California. Everybody's in therapy. And it is not lost on me that, first of all, it's so clear that Sam Cheetah fucking hates Californians, and that the only people who've talked about therapy have been the people who have like wronged Mia for no real reason. Like the kind of evil people in the book. Though Lauren is on her character development arc, I don't know. I think I'm seeing some opinions that Sam Cheetah might have about therapy or about the kind of therapy that she thinks Californians are doing. Oh my God. Crystal comes over and she really easily gets Cobra to admit to killing that guy with his snake in a room full of people and in front of Mia's mom, who's like this very out of place looking wealthy white woman. And then the police arrest him. And then for some reason, even though it was her event and everyone was talking about it, Lauren says she had no idea that Mia was injured that night and that she left in an ambulance. Everybody witnessed this, but Lauren's like, that's so crazy. I'm so sorry about that. She says, I don't know what happened to you, but there was a hashtag for the event and you should go look at that hashtag. Her mom leaves, and Mia's first instinct is not to look at the hashtag. It's to post that photo that her and Max took at the Scenic Outlook and pathetically try to get his attention. And then she looks through the hashtag. And what she sees are photos of her and JP looking beautiful and smiling for the camera. But as she says, if you look closer in their body language, you can see that they were fighting. This is her for the first time really realizing that JP was at the party, even though it has absolutely been known throughout this entire book that he was there. And she's finally like, why didn't he come to the hospital with me? He must be the one who pushed me. And it's obvious from this photo that's damning. This photo that if you showed to a jury, they would convict on it. Again, it is a photo of the two of them smiling at the camera. Crystal then tells her that JP wasn't there when she hit her head because he had left early, and she finally admits that she was the one who pushed Mia, that she came from the date with Cobra and she was so angry that Mia had set her up with this drug kingpin and not paid her that she pushed her. And Mia is upset for sure, but she's also like, yeah, I did wrong you. I should have known better. Those tattoos alone were enough to tell me that there was something wrong with him. Why does this woman hate tattoos? She is acting like an 80-year-old man. Crystal and Mia make up because they were both kind of in the wrong, and then Mia sleeps over at Crystal's place, which is not her place, it's her mom's place. The next morning, Crystal's like, do you really not have anything else to wear? And Mia says, no, just this dress. And she thinks, I really got my money's worth. Which, for the amount of times that the dress has been mentioned in this book, you would think, yeah, she did get her money's worth. But it's been 4 or 5 days, and this dress was $5,000. I would need to wear it probably 100 times more than she has to feel even remotely close to getting my money's worth. Mia has also woken up to like hundreds and hundreds of comments on her honesty project. It is popping off for no reason. Again, no one should care about this at all. Like, why is Faye in her comment section wishing her luck with Max? Why is she publicizing all of this like that's the way to his heart? Of course, it does end up being the way to his heart. Though Crystal makes some good points. She comments and she says, stop stalking this man. And Mia says, what's with the cyber stalking comment? And it will again and again refer to this as the cyber stalking comment when what Crystal said was just stalking. I don't know, like I guess it's another thing that got changed as some part of like hack job editing process, but it's stupid. Crystal's like, you keep tagging him and he's not answering. He's literally a nerd. This isn't the kind of attention that he wants. But Mia thinks, whatever, Crystal. And then she's like, all day today, I'm going to try to look casual and trustworthy just in case he's watching. Once again showing us that she can call it an honesty project all she wants, but this is a performance through and through. Kind of like, you know, being a human. This morning, Crystal and Mia go shopping because she is unbelievably irresponsible with money. She owes $10,000 to the bank. She owes $10,000 to Crystal. She doesn't have a home. And yet she goes shopping. She posts on Instagram, goodbye yellow dress, and everybody cheers her on like that would mean anything to them. They end up going to Forever 21 because, as she says, Forever 21 is full of knockoff red carpet looks. I don't know if Sam Cheetah has ever been inside of Forever 21. That's not the experience that I've had in there. I've seen some really different things than red carpet knockoffs in a Forever 21. Okay, so then JP starts texting her and he's like, I want to give you the strip club business. You don't need to pay me. You don't need anything. I just want to give it to you as my gift to you. And her and Crystal start celebrating. She then spends 3 pages trying to light the yellow dress on fire, which is admittedly kind of funny, but then it just pissed me off because she's like, damn, I really wanted to take a photo of it for my honesty project. Social media is fake. We all know this. Even if you're not filtering the post, it's still a curation of moments that you are choosing to share. And there is no recognition of that. Again, we're supposed to be on her side. We're supposed to be supporting her in this and being like, look how much she's changed as a character because she's not putting Clarendon on her Instagram photo. Okay, so she's posted on Instagram and tagged Max saying, meet me at the taco truck at 8 p.m. for a date. And he has not responded. And yet she goes. She has to bus there, and the man beside her is homeless, and she can't stop talking about how he smells like piss and old cigarettes, and she can barely breathe. So what I said before about how Mia was going to change her ways in regards to how she thinks about and talks about poor people, yeah, I was wrong. She never stops doing that. She does that throughout the whole book. She does not change or grow. She actually instead says, it's okay. I just need to embrace the real life of sitting beside a homeless man on the bus, and then after a while, I'll emerge a millionaire. And I'll tell you, we are in the final 20 pages of this book. This is what her character ends on. She then takes a fucking photo of this man and posts it with the caption, stay away from meth, kids. In 2020, the masses are going to side with her on that. In 2020. She gets to the taco truck half an hour late because she was too busy posting on Instagram and missed her stop. And then she's confused because the menu is half in Spanish at the taco truck, at the fucking taco truck. She then mopes around for a bit, posts a photo of the uneaten burrito that she got from Max, and everyone's like, aw, that sucks, girl. Sorry he didn't show up, as if there are thousands of people sitting around waiting for an update to this saga that they have almost no information about. And then Max texts her, and he says, I'm on the way. I was in the lab all day without my phone, but I'm coming to you now. Except who gets there first but JP? She's like, how did you know I was going to be here? He's like, girl, you've been posting about it on Instagram all day. He's like, let's get out of here. And Mia looks around and she thinks, yeah, this crowd does look a little druggy, but I'm going to wait here for Max. And then like, honestly, actually, genuinely, the way the book ends is that Max shows up and she pretends like the burrito that she has is the rose in the she's the Bachelorette and she's giving her burrito rose. And it's not even played for laughs. Like both JP and Max take it weirdly seriously. The very, very final thing that happens in the book is that, of course, Mia and Max take a selfie because, of course, she chose Max. It's not a choice. We already know what she's doing. Why the fucking Bachelorette burrito? They take a selfie and it's not perfect. And she posts it. And she says, even without remembering most of my life, I know that I'm living up to my name for the first time ever. I am finally at Mia for reals. And that's the story. That is really, truly the story. So there are so many things that are just totally dropped or weren't thought out. I mean, hugely the money. What do you mean old Mia spent her last $100,000 on 2 Instagram posts? What do you mean, oh, actually, she had $35K just sitting around and hadn't paid Crystal with it? What do you mean there was a point when she had $100,000 and she was homeless? I know it's the LA area, but renting is an option. And like these things could have been explained if the book had pushed Mia's character even further with her obsession with looking wealthy and performing that for social media, except it didn't do that. Because again, it ends with Mia striving towards the wealth that she thinks she deserves. And that is meant to be a happy ending for her character. And that is what I am the most absolutely flustered about here, is what this book is saying about class and wealth. There is just so little introspection or insight. As I said when I was partway through, I really felt like it was setting up this clear path that Mia was going to take where she would come to understand that she had more in common with the poor people that she looked down on and spoke so rudely about, and she would change how she thought about class when her position in the hierarchy shifted to where it really is. But no, all the way through to the end of the book, people are druggy, they're meth heads, they're trailer trash, they stink, and on and on. I was so certain that she was becoming shittier as her proximity to wealth grew, but I honestly think now that that was just supposed to be her being naive about how wealthy she actually was. Like, it was trying to be ironic. Like, look at this girl, she actually doesn't have any money, and we all know she's gonna go to the bank and they're gonna say you're broke. Because the book isn't trying to say that exorbitant wealth makes you shitty. It really and truly, I promise you, it ends with her striving to become the millionaire she thought she was, never once having reflected on her opinions about the people who are really her peers. There is also never an acknowledgement of how the people who worked under Mia were living in poverty while she had $100K to irresponsibly blow on 2 Instagram posts. She never looks around at Crystal's situation and thinks, wow, this is really fucking unfair. I'm a piece of shit. Even though she's happy to berate JP for doing the same thing, but without the interpersonal connection that she has with Crystal. And then there's also the homeless man who works for her. If you woke up from a coma with no memory and a homeless man told you that he was your employee and you believed that you owned a yacht, would you not think to yourself, wow, I must be a real piece of shit? And what the fuck was that man doing for her anyway? Totally and completely dropped. I cannot imagine a single thing that he could have been employed doing for her. There is, of course, no acknowledgement about how happy Mia is to dehumanize and exploit these already vulnerable women for the sake of rich men and their money that the women don't even really get to see. She just changes the app, which again, what do you mean app? To be more honest. And that's meant to be seen as like virtuous from her. Also, who the fuck were the Nelsons who she had listed when she asked Siri to call home in the beginning of the book? And not that this needed to be more contemporary, but why was Siri, in a book called Siri Who Am I, only used 4 times? Do you want to know how many times her fucking yellow Prada dress was mentioned? Over 100. Literally every couple of pages, she starts talking about this stupid fucking dress. I also looked up how many times that she uses a percentage to describe something, and it's 22. 22 times. Where we could have used an adjective or an adverb or a description, she uses a percentage, and almost always it's 100%. Sometimes it's 75 and sometimes it's 99. This was also filled with very obvious spelling and grammatical errors. None of the characters were likable or interesting, and they all lacked common sense to such a degree that it was just irritating to watch them do anything. It had dozens of pop culture references, all 5 to 10 years out of date, and it wanted to be really steeped in internet culture, but it was written by someone who obviously doesn't know shit about internet culture. This is a rom-com mystery written by an author who isn't funny, who can't develop characters or a relationship or show us any chemistry between them, and who obviously didn't plan her book or write it with any direction in mind. She has very little understanding of what it means to be an effective writer, and this has made every other book I've ever read seem incredible. I didn't know that the bar could be this low for a book. And now I'm looking back on books like Verity by Colleen Hoover and I'm thinking, damn, I was too harsh. This book made Verity look good. Literally everything about it is deeply misogynistic, racist, classist. It is so fucking offensive on every single level. Oftentimes she tries to be funny and it's just like the shittiest thing that the shittiest person you know would say. I truly believe, and I'm not exaggerating though I know it sounds it, that this is the worst book ever published and it's not even close. And that did make it a joy for me. It just kept shocking me with how bad it could get. At this point, having finished it, the footnotes aren't even in the top 50 worst parts of this book. If you want to read something and be incredibly and rightfully offended, hate every sentence, and then also all of the ideas and themes, I would highly recommend Siri Who Am I by Sam Cheetah as a top tier hate read. This is truly the worst of all time. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. I will see you next time. Reading something better, I think, maybe. I mean, I can't get lower. I cannot possibly read something worse than this. I'll see you later. Bye.